Hello everyone, today Biker with a Heart bring you a story full of humanity and compassion. We hope you enjoy listening.
The desert wind howled like a wounded animal, whipping sand across the cracked asphalt of Route 17, where the sun dipped low and painted the horizon in blood-red streaks. In the shadow of a rusted billboard advertising forgotten motels, a boy no older than 10 huddled against the guardrail, his small frame shaking not just from the chill, but from a terror that etched lines into his dirt-streaked face. His clothes were torn, knuckles scraped raw from what must have been a desperate scramble through the scrub brush. Tears carved clean paths down his cheeks as he clutched a frayed backpack, whispering to himself in broken sobs. They took her. They took Lily. The words barely escaped his lips, swallowed by the vast emptiness, but in that moment the world narrowed to his plea, a child's voice cracking under the weight of unimaginable loss. No cars passed, no Samaritans appeared, just the boy, alone, as dusk crept in like a thief, promising to erase him too. Ethan Ghost Harlan throttled down on his Harley, the engine's deep rumble cutting through the twilight like a predator's growl. He'd been riding solo for hours, the vibration of the bike a familiar anchor against the ghosts that rode shotgun in his mind, memories of sand-swept battlefields in distant lands, where promises made in foxholes had turned to ash. A former Navy SEAL, Ethan bore the scars of those wars, not just in the jagged line across his jaw or the tattoo of a faded anchor on his forearm, but in the hollow ache that kept him wandering the backroads instead of settling down. At 42, he led the Iron Vipers, a crew of hardened riders who traded camo for leather vests, bound by oaths forged in blood and brotherhood. But tonight, the open road called him alone, away from the clubhouse's neon glow and the weight of old loyalties. He spotted the boy from a quarter-mile out, a tiny figure dwarfed by the endless plain, and something primal twisted in his gut. He killed the engine 100 yards away, the sudden silence amplifying the child's whimpers. Dismounting with the fluid grace of a man who'd faced down worse than shadows, Ethan approached slow, hands open, his boots crunching gravel like whispered apologies. "Hey, kid," Ethan said, voice low and steady, the kind honed from diffusing bombs and calming rookies under fire. He knelt to eye level, close enough to smell the fierce sweat on the boy, but not so close as to spook him. The child's eyes, wide and haunted, flicked up, brown irises ringed with panic. "Name's Ethan. You hurt?" The boy flinched, scooting back until the rail bit into his spine, but then the dam broke. They took my sister, Lily, big truck, men with tattoos. Said she'd pay for Dad's debts." His voice was a rasp, words tumbling out like spilled marbles. Ethan's jaw tightened. He'd seen this script before. Small-town debts spiraling into nightmares, predators circling the vulnerable like vultures. The boy, who introduced himself as Caleb, clutched Ethan's sleeve. "Please. She's only 8. They dragged her away at the gas station. I ran, but—" Sobs choked him again. In that instant, Ethan felt the pull of an ancient vow, one whispered decades ago under a desert sky much like this. Back in his SEAL days, he'd sworn to his squad, brothers in arms, to never leave one behind, no matter the cost. That promise had survived black ops and betrayals, evolving into the creed of the Vipers: protect the innocent, honor the word, ride for the forgotten. Lily's abduction wasn't his fight, not by blood or badge. But Caleb's desperate gaze ignited something dormant, a spark of redemption for the missions where he'd failed to bring everyone home. "Listen to me," Ethan murmured, placing a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder, feeling the tremble ease just a fraction. "We're gonna get her back, you and me. I'll call in the crew if I have to, every Viper from here to the border. But first, we move smart. Tell me everything you remember about those men, the truck." As Caleb nodded, spilling details in halting bursts, the faded eagle tattoo on one thug's neck, the truck's dented grille gleaming under the station's floodlights. Ethan's mind raced. This wasn't just a rescue. It was a reckoning, a chance to turn a lone rider's solitude into a thunderous stand. By the time the stars pierced the velvet sky, Ethan had Caleb on the bike behind him, the boy's arms wrapped tight around his waist, and a single text fired off to his second-in-command. "Trouble on 17. Sister snatched. Rally point. Dusty Rose Diner. Bring the faith." The engine roared to life, headlights slicing the dark, carrying them toward a dawn where 77 Vipers would answer the call, their leathers a shield against the gathering storm. One boy's whisper had awakened the pack, and in the world of broken promises, that was enough to change fates forever. The diner's neon sign flickered like a heartbeat as Ethan pulled in, Caleb's weight a reminder of the fragility he now guarded. Inside, the air smelled of strong coffee and sizzling bacon, a haven for truckers and wanderers, nursing their own scars. Ethan guided the boy to a corner booth, away from prying eyes, and ordered 2 plates. Nothing fancy, just fuel to steady nerves. As Caleb picked at his fries, recounting the afternoon's horror, Ethan's phone buzzed relentlessly. Replies from the Vipers poured in. "On my way, Ghost." "What's the play?" "For the kid, always." These weren't just men. They were his chosen family, veterans and outcasts who'd found purpose in the rumble of engines and the code of the road. Ethan had pulled them from the brink, bomber vets like Marcus, who owed him for dragging him out of a burning Humvee, mechanics like Lena, a sharp-eyed widow who'd patched more than bikes in her garage. Now, they mobilized for a stranger's kin, because that's what oaths demanded. But doubt gnawed at Ethan as he studied a napkin sketch of the truck's plates, Caleb's shaky memory rendering them as KNG 47. Was this a local crew shaking down families, or something uglier, tied to the cartels that slithered along these borders? His SEAL instincts screamed caution, recon first, strike second. Yet the boy's haunted eyes demanded action. "She was screaming my name," Caleb whispered, voice cracking. "I hid in the bushes, but I should have fought." Ethan leaned in, his voice a gravelly anchor. "You did right surviving. That's fighting too. Lily needs you strong now." He ruffled the kid's hair, a rare softness breaking through his armored exterior. Outside, headlights multiplied, Vipers arriving in 2s and 3s, engines purring to a halt like wolves circling prey. By midnight, 20 riders filled the lot, vests emblazoned with the Viper's coiled serpent, a symbol of vigilance reborn. As the group huddled in the diner's back room, maps spread across a scarred table, Ethan laid out the plan. We tracked the truck north, toward the old mill district. No guns blazing. That's their game. We use eyes, wits, the road's own justice. Nods rippled through the crew. This was their way, poetic retribution over brute force. Marcus, broad-shouldered and scarred from shoulder to hip, clapped Ethan's back. "Like Fallujah, brother. We get the girl, honor the promise." The words hung heavy, evoking ghosts Ethan thought buried. In that war-torn hell, he'd lost his best friend to a betrayal from above. Corrupt brass, selling out positions for kickbacks. It had shattered him, driving him to the Vipers, where loyalty was earned, not issued. Now, echoing that betrayal, whispers from Caleb hinted at a sheriff's deputy turning a blind eye to the abduction, pocketing bribes from the debt collectors. Corruption's stench was unmistakable. Dawn crept in, painting the mill's silhouette in gold as the convoy rolled out. 77 strong now, word spreading like wildfire through the network. Ethan rode point, Caleb secured in a sidecar rigged by Lena, the boy's face set with fragile hope. The air thrummed with exhaust and anticipation, the desert awakening to their passage. Tires bit into the dust, kicking up veils that shimmered like veils of fate. Ahead, the mill loomed, a labyrinth of rusting silos and forgotten machinery where shadows hid sins. Ethan's heart pounded, not with fear, but resolve. This ride wasn't for glory. It was for the whisper that had pierced his armor, for the sister stolen in broad daylight, for the promise that bound them all. As the first rays hit the serpent patches, gleaming like badges of unyielding honor, Ethan knew. Whatever waited in those shadows, the Vipers would face it as one, redeeming the lost through silent, unbreakable will. The mill's rusted gates creaked under the weight of neglect, a skeletal sentinel guarding secrets buried in the weeds. Dust swirled in lazy eddies as the Viper convoy fanned out, engines idling to a low growl that vibrated through the ground like a distant thunder. Ethan scanned the perimeter from his vantage on a low rise, the morning sun glinting off shattered windows high in the silos, turning jagged glass into accusatory eyes. The air carried the metallic tang of decay mixed with something sharper, fear perhaps, or the faint echo of desperation. Caleb peered from the sidecar, his small hands gripping the edge, knuckles white as fresh bone. "Is she in there?" he whispered, voice barely cutting the hush. Ethan nodded once, sharp and reassuring, though his gut twisted with the uncertainty of it all. "We're close, kid. Stay put with Lena. She's got eyes like a hawk." He dismounted, boots sinking into the soft earth, and signaled to Marcus, who rolled up beside him on a battered Indian chief, its chrome scarred from too many close calls. The crew held position, a disciplined phalanx of leather and steel. 77 riders, their vests a mosaic of patches earned in fires fought and oaths kept. No one revved for show. This was precision born from drills in desert ops and back-alley standoffs. Lena, with her no-nonsense braid and grease-stained gloves, knelt by Caleb, murmuring low comforts about sisters found and families mended. Slipping through a gap in the chain link, Ethan and Marcus moved like shadows, the crunch of gravel underfoot muffled by the wind's constant sigh. The mill's interior unfolded in layers of gloom, conveyor belts frozen in mid-haul, cobwebs draping like funeral veils over forgotten crates. Ethan's senses sharpened, SEAL training kicking in, the faint drip of water from a leaking pipe, the acrid whiff of old oil, the subtle shift of air that spoke of recent passage. They hugged the walls, pausing at corners where sunlight pierced like reluctant spotlights. Voices drifted from deeper in, rough and laced with menace. Two men, arguing over the take and the boss's cut. Ethan's hand hovered near the concealed holster at his belt, but he checked it. Violence was the last resort, a failure of the code. Peering around a stack of rotted pallets, they spotted the truck, Caleb's description etched in every dent and fleck of faded blue paint. It sat squat in a loading bay, engine cooling with faint ticks, its bed tarp covered and bulging ominously. Nearby, a third man paced, his neck tattoo, a crude eagle with talons outstretched, catching the light as he lit a cigarette. The thug's laugh barked out, crude and triumphant, as he kicked at a loose chain. "Kid's sister ain't worth the hassle, but the payout." "Sweet." His partner grunted agreement, shadows playing across faces hardened by easy cruelty. Ethan's blood simmered. These weren't cartel kings, but low-rung enforcers, the kind who preyed on the desperate because the system let them. Whispers of the deputy's involvement echoed in his mind. Bribes to look away, a badge tarnished for pocket change. A muffled cry pierced the air then, faint but unmistakable, from beneath the tarp. Lily. Ethan's resolve hardened like cooling steel. He motioned Marcus back, but as they retreated, a loose board groaned under Marcus's boot, a betrayal of the mill's own decay. The pacing thug spun, eyes narrowing. "Who's there?" His hand dipped toward a waistband bulge, cigarette forgotten. Ethan froze, calculating. Fight now and risk the girl or draw them out. The moments stretched, taut as a tripwire until Marcus stepped forward, hands raised in mock surrender. "Easy, brother. We're just lost riders, looking for a shortcut." His voice boomed with feigned joviality, the big man's frame filling the doorway like a barricade. The thug sneered, advancing with predatory swagger, his two companions emerging from the shadows, burly, ink-sleeved, reeking of stale beer and false bravado. "Shortcut? This ain't the interstate. Grease monkey, turn around before we make you." But Ethan's eyes flicked to the tarp, where the cry repeated, softer now, choked with fear. Lily's voice, small and breaking. "Caleb?" It was the spark. Marcus shifted, blocking the enforcer's view, while Ethan circled wide, heart pounding a war drum. No guns, no chaos. The Viper's way was smarter, leveraging the terrain like a chessboard. Outside, the crew sensed the tension. Engines whispered to life, a perimeter forming without a word. Lena kept Caleb close, her hand steady on his shoulder as he strained to listen. "They're coming back," she assured him, though her own jaw set like iron. Back inside, words escalated, taunts turning to shoves, Marcus absorbing a wild swing with a grunt, buying seconds. Ethan reached the truck's side, knife flashing to slice the ties. The tarp peeled back, revealing a girl bound at wrists and ankles, her face pale and streaked with tears, eyes wide with the terror of the unknown. Lily, fragile as a sparrow, but alive. "Shh," Ethan breathed, lifting her gently, her small body trembling against his chest. "Your brother's here. We're taking you home." The scuffle erupted then, fists and curses echoing off the walls, but the Vipers were already moving. Riders poured in through side entrances, not as invaders, but as a tide, some blocking exits, others securing the perimeter with chains, and warnings barked in gravel tones. "Stand down," Ethan commanded from the truck, Lily cradled in his arms, her head against his shoulder. The enforcers faltered, outnumbered and outmaneuvered, their bluster crumbling under the weight of unyielding eyes. No shots fired, just the poetry of presence, loyalty manifesting as an unbreakable wall. One thug lunged, but Marcus felled him with a precise tackle, pinning him without excess force. "For the girl," he growled, echoing the creed. As the dust settled, Ethan carried Lily out into the sunlight, her whimpers easing into exhausted relief. Caleb broke from Lena's hold, rushing forward, the siblings colliding in a tangle of arms and sobs. The Vipers encircled them, a living shield, their engines humming a lullaby of safety. But Ethan's gaze lingered on the horizon, where distant sirens wailed. The deputy's corruption calling reinforcements. This victory was fleeting. The real storm brewed in badges and boardrooms, where justice twisted like barbed wire. He'd honored the whisper, redeemed a fragment of his past, but the promise demanded more, exposing the rot, protecting the fragile bond now reforged. With Lily safe in the sidecar, Caleb beside her, the convoy reformed, rolling south toward reckoning. The road ahead shimmered with heat and hidden truths, but for the first time in years, Ethan's ghosts rode silent, subdued by the weight of lives reclaimed. And now, I invite you to leave in the comments where you're watching from and the exact hour you heard this story. We wish to know how far these northern confessions travel and at what moments they reach you. The sirens wailed like banshees across the flat expanse, slicing through the mill's dusty aftermath as the Viper convoy idled in formation. Ethan cradled Lily against his chest for a moment longer, her small breaths ragged but steadying, while Caleb clung to her hand, tears mixing with the grime on his face. The siblings' reunion was a fragile miracle, etched in the morning light that filtered through the silo's broken teeth, casting long shadows over the enforcers now zip-tied and slumped against the truck's wheel. Marcus wiped sweat from his brow, his massive frame heaving from the restraint he'd shown. No broken bones, just enough force to remind the thugs of consequences earned, not inflicted. The air hung heavy with the scent of heated metal and trampled weeds, the Viper's engines purring low, a collective heartbeat ready to surge. Ethan's eyes narrowed toward the horizon, where blue and red lights pulsed like infected wounds. "Deputies, boys," he muttered to Lena, who nodded grimly, her grease-streaked hands flexing on the handlebars of her customized soft ale. The corruption Caleb had whispered about in the diner, bribes funneled through the local sheriff's office to shield debt collectors from scrutiny, now reared its head. This wasn't random. It was a web spun from small-town greed that preyed on families like Caleb and Lily's, turning debts into disappearances. Ethan's seal passed whispered warnings. Intel first, always. He hoisted Lily into the sidecar beside her brother, securing them with a blanket from Lena's pack, the fabric soft against their scraped skin. "Hold tight," he said, voice a low rumble over the rising whine of approaching cruisers. "We're not done riding." The convoy moved as one, a serpent uncoiling with deliberate grace. 77 bikes forming a protective wedge around the sidecar, dust plumes rising like veils of defiance. No frantic escape. Ethan led them south on a secondary trail, paralleling the main road, tires chewing through gravel that crunched like brittle promises. The sirens faded behind, outmaneuvered by the Viper's knowledge of these backlands, roots etched from years of hauling supplies for flood victims and evading storms. But the weight of what they'd uncovered pressed on Ethan like an unseen rucksack. In the rear view, he glimpsed the enforcer's truck, left abandoned but not forgotten, its plates a breadcrumb leading to the sheriff's involvement. "We need proof," he'd told Marcus earlier during the tense extraction. "Not vengeance, justice that sticks." Hours blurred into the relentless march of the sun, the desert's heat baking the leather of their vests until it clung like a second skin. They paused at a forgotten outpost, a cluster of sun-bleached trailers ringed by chain link, where an old contact of Ethan's, a wiry veteran named Samuel, ran a salvage yard. Samuel, with his salt and pepper beard and eyes sharp as switchblades, had been a Viper affiliate since the early days, trading parts for protection during cartel skirmishes. He met them at the gate, shotgun slung casual over his shoulder, the yard's air thick with the oily tang of rusting hulks. "Ghost," he greeted, clasping Ethan's forearm in a grip that spoke of battles shared. "Heard the rumble. What's the fire?" Ethan dismounted, helping Caleb and Lily out, the girl's steps tentative on the uneven ground, her brother's arm steady around her waist. The siblings looked smaller here, dwarfed by the skeletal remains of vehicles, but their eyes held a spark. Trust, fragile and new. As the crew spread out to refuel and rest, Ethan pulled Samuel aside, sketching the morning's events on a scrap of paper, the abduction, the mill, the sirens. "These lowlifes work for Harlan Tate," Samuel said, voice dropping to a gravel whisper, referencing the sheriff whose name carried the stink of compromise. "Tate's been skimming from protection rackets, turning a blind eye to grabs like this. Word is, he greenlit the sister's snatch to settle a mechanics tab. Your kid's dad, I reckon." The revelation hit Ethan like a sandstorm's first gust. Caleb's father, a simple garage owner in a nowhere town, had borrowed against bad times, only to find the lenders were Tate's shadows. Ethan's mind flashed to his own ghosts, the op in Kandahar, where a commander's greed had cost lives, promises shattered under friendly fire. He couldn't let that echo here. "We expose him," Ethan decided, the words solid as iron. "Quietly. Get me access to his logs, anything digital. Vipers have tech. Lena's got a laptop that cracks like eggshells." Samuel nodded, leading them to a shaded trailer where cooling fans hummed against the heat. Inside, the space was a nest of monitors and tangled cables, lit by the green glow of screens. As Lena worked her magic, fingers flying over keys, pulling encrypted files from the sheriff's unsecured server, the crew gathered in the yard. sharing water and stories to keep the edge off. Marcus regaled the younger riders with tales of Ethan's SEAL exploits, not for glory, but to remind them of the creed: family chosen, oaths unbroken. Lily, perched on a crate with a juice box in hand, watched wide-eyed as Caleb described the mill to a cluster of aunt-like figures, women riders like Grace, a former nurse whose steady hands now bandaged minor scrapes from the scuffle. "He came like a hero," Caleb said, pointing to Ethan, who stood apart, arms crossed, scanning the horizon. The boy's words stirred something deep, a redemption Ethan hadn't sought, but now claimed, the healer's touch for wounds beyond the physical. By midday, Lena had gold, emails timestamped to the abduction hour, Tate authorizing containment for the debt, routed through shell accounts. No overt violence detailed, just cold bureaucracy masking the horror. Ethan's jaw clenched, the screen's light carving shadows across his scarred face. "Enough to burn him," he murmured. But sirens echoed again, distant but closing, word of the mill escape spreading. Samuel's radio crackled with chatter from town. Tate mobilizing, painting the Vipers as vigilantes, outlaws disrupting official business. The trap was set, corruption's jaws snapping. Ethan gathered the crew under the yard's lone mesquite tree, its branches twisting like gnarled fingers against the sky. "We ride to the county line. Hand this to a Fed contact. Clean, no blood." Nods rippled, but doubt flickered in some eyes. Tate's reach was long, his badges a wall. Lily tugged Ethan's sleeve then, her voice a whisper thin as desert air. "You promised, like Caleb said." The words pierced, echoing the boy's initial plea, binding Ethan tighter to the vow. He knelt, meeting her gaze. "And I keep it. For you, for him, for every forgotten soul." The convoy reformed under the blistering sun, engines roaring defiance as they peeled out, dust devils chasing their wake. Caleb and Lily rode secure in the sidecar, the girl's head on her brother's shoulder, a picture of mended fragility. Ahead, the road twisted toward confrontation, not with fists, but truth's unyielding blade. Ethan's ghosts rode with him now, not as burdens, but allies. The promise of old wars fueling this new stand. Tate's empire of shadows loomed, but the Viper's light, forged in loyalty and silent honor, would cut through, redeeming the lost and holding the line against the dark. The horizon shimmered, heat mirages dancing like uncertain fates, but Ethan's resolve burned clearer, a beacon for the family he'd chosen to defend. The asphalt blurred beneath the Viper convoy like a river of molten black, the sun climbing mercilessly toward its zenith, turning the desert into a furnace that tested resolve as much as engines. Ethan rode point, the wind tearing at his vest, carrying the faint, salty tang of sweat from the riders behind him. 77 bikes thrummed in unison, a mechanical symphony that drowned out the doubts whispering in his mind. Caleb and Lily nestled in the sidecar, the girl's head bobbing with the rhythm of the road, her small hand intertwined with her brother's. She'd said little since the yard, but her eyes, once clouded with fear, now held a quiet spark, reflecting the unyielding horizon. Ethan glanced back, the sight a balm against the storm brewing ahead. This wasn't just a ride, it was a pilgrimage toward truth, where old promises collided with the present's sharp edges. Marcus flanked Ethan's left on his rumbling chief, the big man's presence a steady anchor, while Lena held the right, her soft-ale cutting clean lines through the heat haze. The evidence burned in Ethan's saddlebag, a thumb drive etched with Tate's digital sins, emails and logs that peeled back the sheriff's facade like sunburnt skin. Samuel's intel had been gold. Tate not only greenlit the abduction, but orchestrated a network of collections that ensnared families across 3 counties, debts twisted into chains under the guise of law. Ethan's SEAL instincts churned. Expose without escalation, hand it off clean to federal eyes who owed him favors from black bag ops long buried. but the radio crackled. Samuel's voice cutting through static. Tate's got roadblocks at the line. State troopers, his puppets. They're spinning you as kidnappers now. Armed gang with stolen kids. The words landed like shrapnel, scattering tension through the ranks. Ethan keyed his mic, voice calm over the roar. Steady, we veer east, hit the old ferry crossing. Feds wait there, Agent Reyes, clean slate. Nods rippled back, but the air thickened with unease, the convoy's growl deepening as they banked onto a rutted dirt track. Dust devils spun up around them, veiling the world in ochre clouds that stung eyes and throats. Caleb leaned forward in the sidecar, shouting against the wind, "They're coming for us?" Ethan met his gaze in the mirror, the boy's face a mirror of his own youthful fears from war-torn nights. "Not if we outsmart them. Hold the line, kid. Promises like ours don't break easy." As the track narrowed into a serpentine path flanked by jagged rock outcrops, the first signs of pursuit emerged. Distant flashes of light piercing the haze, cruisers bouncing over uneven terrain. Tate's web tightened, his corruption manifesting as a chase that echoed the betrayals Ethan had buried. Memories surfaced unbidden. The Kandahar night when a superior's greed sold out coordinates, leaving his squad exposed, the explosion's roar claiming lives he'd sworn to shield. That failure had forged the Viper's creed, no one left behind, truth over expediency. Now, with Lily's soft breathing a reminder of stakes higher than medals, Ethan pushed the throttle, the Harley's frame vibrating like a live wire. The crew adapted seamlessly, formations shifting to shield the sidecar, engines harmonizing in a defensive ballet. They crested a rise, the ferry crossing sprawling below, a weathered dock jutting into a sluggish river, its waters brown and sluggish under the relentless sun. Reyes's unmarked SUV idled there, a lone figure in shades leaning against the hood, arms crossed, but blocking the approach. 3 county cruisers, lights strobing, deputies fanned out with hands on holsters. Tate himself stood central, a paunchy silhouette in starched khaki, his face flushed redder than the desert clay. "Harlan," he bellowed through a bullhorn, voice amplified and oily. "Stand down! Those kids are evidence in a debt dispute. You're interfering with official proceedings." The lie hung in the air, as transparent as the heat shimmer, but his eyes darted to the sidecar, calculating the optics of a public standoff. Ethan killed his engine first, the silence crashing like a wave, followed by the cascade of idling bikes cutting off. The Vipers dismounted in a wave, not aggressive but unyielding, a wall of leather and weathered faces encircling the sidecar. Marcus stepped forward, broad shoulders squared, while Lena hovered protectively near the children. Caleb clutched Lily closer, the girl's whisper barely audible. "Don't let them take me back." Ethan's boots hit the gravel with deliberate crunch, each step measured as he approached Tate, hands visible, the thumb drive heavy in his pocket. "This ends here, Sheriff," he said, voice low, but carrying like thunder's prelude. "We know about the emails, the rackets, hand over the kid's father, clean, or the feds get everything." Tate's laugh barked out, forced and hollow, but sweat beaded on his brow despite the dry heat. "Bluffing, biker. My deputies have warrants for your arrest. Vigilantism, endangering minors." His men shifted, tension coiling like springs, the river's lap against the dock the only underscore. Reyes moved then, emerging from the SUV with badge glinting, her stride purposeful. A former JAG officer, Ethan, had pulled from a dicey extraction years back. She carried no illusions about small-town rot. "Sheriff Tate," she called, voice slicing clean. "Federal jurisdiction. Step aside. We've got probable cause on corruption. Your server's wide open." She held up a tablet mirroring the drive's contents, her team's remote pull confirming the breach. The standoff stretched, a taut as bowstrings, deputies exchanging uneasy glances as Tate's bluster faltered. Whispers rippled through the Vipers, stories of similar stands, oaths tested and held. Ethan locked eyes with the sheriff, seeing the flicker of a man cornered by his own greed, echoes of the commanders who'd crumbled under scrutiny. "For the kids," Ethan said simply, the words a vow renewed. Lily's gaze met his from the circle, a silent plea that sealed it. Tate's shoulders sagged, the bullhorn dropping as he muttered orders to stand down, cruisers peeling away in a spray of gravel. Reyes took the drive, nodding to Ethan, a debt settled in glances. As the feds secured the scene, interviewing Caleb and Lily with gentle precision, the Vipers reformed around their bikes. The river's breeze cooling the fire in their veins. Ethan knelt by the siblings, ruffling Caleb's hair. "You whispered," we answered. "Family now." The boy nodded, eyes shining with something like awe, while Lily hugged his leg, the bond reforged in the crucible of the road. But as the convoy prepared to roll, Tate's parting glare lingered, a promise of lingering shadows. Justice had bitten, but corruption's roots ran deep, demanding vigilance. Ethan mounted up, the engine's roar a declaration, carrying them toward home and the quiet mending of scars. The sun dipped lower, gilding the water in gold, a testament to promises kept against the tide. If this tale of quiet courage stirs your heart, smash that like button below. It helps these stories of honor and redemption reach more souls in need. The river's murmur softened to a distant hush as the Viper convoy pulled away from the ferry crossing, the sun's descent casting elongated shadows across the cracked earth that stretched like veins toward the horizon. Ethan rode at the fore, the Harley's steady thrum, a counterpoint to the fading echoes of justice served, Reyes's team swarming Tate's deputies, badges clinking like chains of accountability. The thumb drive's secrets had unraveled the sheriff's web, emails and logs painting a portrait of systemic betrayal that no amount of bluster could erase. But victory tasted bittersweet on Ethan's tongue, laced with the grit of unfinished business. Caleb and Lily rode secure in the sidecar, the girl's fingers tracing patterns on her brother's arm, their shared silence a fragile armor against the day's scars. The air cooled with the encroaching twilight, carrying the faint briny scent of the water they'd left behind, mingling with the exhaust's acrid bite. Marcus pulled alongside as they merged onto a smoother stretch of blacktop, his Indian chief's engine growling in solidarity. "Tate's done, Ghost. Feds'll bury him in paperwork deeper than a foxhole." The big man's voice cut through the wind, laced with the rough optimism of a survivor who'd seen too many dawns break over worse horizons. Ethan nodded, jaw set beneath the stubble-shadowed line of his scar, but his eyes scanned the mirrors, instincts honed in ambushes that never fully slept. The sheriff's glare at the crossing had lingered, a venomous promise that corruption didn't yield quietly. Whispers from Samuel's radio earlier hinted at loose ends, Tate's inner circle, enforcers who'd scattered like roaches when the light hit the mill. One name surfaced in the chatter, a lieutenant named Harlan, no relation but cut from the same tainted cloth, holed up in a border town motel with a grudge and a grudge's arsenal. The convoy thinned as they approached the outskirts of Willow Creek, a speck of a town where Caleb and Lily's father waited, his garage a humble beacon of normalcy amid the chaos. Not all 77 could roll in en masse. Ethan signaled a split, half the crew peeling off to shadow routes, eyes on tails that might follow from Tate's crumbling empire. Lena stayed close, her soft-tail weaving protective patterns around the sidecar, her braid whipping like a banner of resolve. The children had dozed fitfully during the ride, exhaustion claiming what fear had spared, but now Caleb stirred, rubbing eyes heavy with the weight of reclaimed safety. "Dad, he's gonna be okay." The question hung, small against the vast sky bruising purple. Ethan frothed down, slowing to match the boy's need for words. "He's waiting. Debts forgiven once the feds untangled Tate's mess. You kept your family whole, kid. That's stronger than any chain." The truth settled between them, a quiet vow echoing the one Ethan had made under that first desert sky with Caleb. Redemption wasn't a single blaze, but embers tended through the night, and in protecting these two, Ethan mended fractures from his own past. Missions where innocence had been collateral, promises whispered over graves. Lily murmured in her sleep, "Home," the word, a soft anchor pulling them forward. They arrived as stars pricked the velvet dome overhead, the garage's fluorescent lights spilling onto the lot like hesitant welcomes. Joseph Harlan, no kin to the sheriff, just a man worn by hard luck and harder choices, stood in the doorway, sleeves rolled up over forearms, etched with grease and quiet worry. He'd been alerted by Reyes's preliminary call, the feds assuring him his children were en route, debts nullified in the corruption's fallout. But seeing them, disheveled, clinging to strangers in leather, crumpled his resolve. He rushed forward as Ethan eased the sidecar to a stop, engines sighing into silence. Caleb tumbled out first, burying into his father's chest, while Lily followed slower, legs unsteady but eyes locking on the familiar face with a flood of relief. "Daddy," she whispered, the sound breaking the night's hush like fragile glass. Joseph knelt, enveloping them both, his broad back shaking with unspoken thanks. The Vipers formed a loose perimeter, engines off but presence palpable, a chosen family extending its circle without demand. Ethan dismounted, boots scraping the oil-stained concrete, and approached with measured steps, the air thick with the scent of motor oil and cooling metal. "Mr. Harlan," he said, extending a hand calloused from wrenches and triggers alike. "Ethan, your kids, they're tough. Told me about the debts, the grab. It's over. Tate's finished. Evidence handed clean." Joseph's grip was iron. Eyes rimmed red as he searched Ethan's face, seeing not just a biker, but the guardian who'd answered a whisper in the wind. I borrowed from the wrong shadows," Joseph admitted, voice gravel rough, glancing at the garage's shadowed bays where tools lay idle, victims of the racket that had spiraled out of control. "Thought I could fix the roof, keep the lights on. Never imagined it'd touch them." The confession hung, laced with the shame of a father outmaneuvered, but Ethan's nod was steady, devoid of judgment. Shadows break when light hits them. Vipers ride for that. Promises kept, no one left in the dark. Marcus and Lena lingered nearby, the crew's quiet vigil a testament to their creed. Stories of similar salvations murmured low among the riders like prayers. As the reunion unfolded, hugs tightening, words tumbling in halting bursts, Ethan stepped back, giving space while his mind mapped the lingering threats. A crackle on his radio broke the moment, Samuel's voice urgent. "Ghost, Harlan's lieutenant bolted north, motel on the edge, holed up with heat. Word is, he's gunning for payback, thinks the kids are leverage." The name clicked, the same thug from the mill, eagle tattoo vivid in memory. Ethan's pulse quickened, not with fear, but the familiar coil of duty. Tate might be caged, but his echoes demanded silencing. He glanced at the family, now clustered under the garage's awning, Lily laughing softly at something Caleb said, the sound a rare melody in the desert's symphony. "Stay with them," Ethan told Lena, voice low as he remounted. "Marcus, you and 10 riders, flank me. We end this quiet, before it circles back." The big man nodded, clapping shoulders with Joseph in farewell, the gesture sealing an unspoken alliance. Engines stirred to life in a staggered chorus, not the full thunder but a precise strike force. Headlights piercing the night like determined stars. Joseph watched them go, children safe in his arms, whispering to Ethan over the growing rumble, "You saved more than them tonight. Owe you the road." Ethan met his gaze, the weight of old oaths lightening just a fraction. "Road's what we ride for. Keep 'em close." The convoy sliced into the darkness, tires humming over asphalt that gleamed under moonlight, the motel's neon sign a flickering lure on the town's frayed edge. Harlan's lieutenant waited, unaware that the whisper that started it all now summoned a reckoning. Loyalty's blade, honed by redemption, cutting through the final threads of corruption. Ethan's ghosts rode silent beside him, subdued by the honor of the stand. As the night deepened toward dawn's unyielding promise, the motel's neon sign buzzed erratically against the star-pricked sky, its pink glow bleeding into puddles from an earlier rain, casting the parking lot in a sickly hue that mirrored the underbelly of desperation. Ethan eased his Harley to a crawl at the lot's edge, the engine's low purr the only sound breaking the night's oppressive quiet, save for the distant howl of a coyote echoing off distant buttes. The place was a relic, peeling paint on stucco walls, windows curtained in faded plaid, the kind of stopover where transients nursed regrets and secrets festered like open wounds. 11 vipers fanned out behind him, bikes gliding to silent halts, their forms blending into the shadows like ghosts summoned for one last vigil. Marcus killed his engine last. The big man's dismount a deliberate creak of leather and steel, his eyes scanning the row of doors, numbered in chipped brass. Ethan's pulse thrummed steady, a war drum tempered by years of ops, where silence won more than shouts. The lieutenant, Vince Harlan, no blood tie to the sheriff but loyal as a hound to the racket, had holed up in room 7, per Samuel's tip, nursing a grudge sharpened by the mill's humiliation. Whispers on the radio painted him as the enforcer who dragged Lily, his eagle tattoo, a mark of the web now fraying at the edges. But this wasn't revenge. It was excision, cutting out the rot to let the promise heal. Ethan signaled the crew, 2 to watch the rear, 3 to cover flanks, the rest poised like coiled springs. No guns drawn. The Viper's code demanded precision, a stand that honored the innocent without descending to the darkness they fought. He approached the door alone, boots whispering over cracked concrete that crunched faintly underfoot, the air thick with the stale reek of cigarette smoke seeping from vents. A shadow shifted behind the thin curtain, Vince, pacing, his silhouette bulky with tension and the bulge of a concealed piece. Ethan rapped knuckles against the wood, 3 measured knocks that echoed like a judge's gavel. "Harlan!" he called, voice low and gravel-edged, carrying through the barrier. "It's Ghost. We talk, or this ends messy." Silence stretched, taut as a bowstring, broken only by the faint click of a chain sliding free. The door cracked open, revealing Vince's face, pockmarked, eyes bloodshot with fury and cheap whiskey, the tattoo peeking from his collar like a warning flag. "You got balls rolling up here, biker," Vince snarled, hand twitching toward his waistband, but Ethan's steady gaze held him, unblinking, the scar along his jaw catching the neon's flicker. "Tate's finished. Feds have the logs, your grabs, everything. Walk away clean, or the crew outside makes sure you don't." Vince's laugh was bitter, forced, but his eyes darted to the lot, where shadows stirred, Marcus's bulk unmistakable, Lena's silhouette a quiet threat. The lieutenant stepped out, door swinging wide. The room behind him a mess of takeout wrappers and a half-empty bottle, the air escaping in a wave of sour defeat. "Kids got away 'cause of you. Tate'll fry, but I ain't going down quiet." His fingers flexed, but Ethan moved first, a fluid step closing the gap, hand clamping Vince's wrist before it found steel. The scuffle was brief, contained. No wild swings, just Ethan's seal-honed leverage twisting the arm, Marcus materializing to secure the piece with a zip tie snatched from a vest pocket. Vince buckled to his knees on the gritty pavement, curses spilling like spilled oil, but the fight drained from him under the weight of encircled eyes. The Vipers closed in, not triumphant, but resolute, their presence a wall that spoke of oaths unbroken. Lena knelt by the door, phone in hand, already dialing Reyes for pickup, the feds en route to sweep the remnants, turning whispers into warrants. "For the girl," Marcus murmured to Vince, echoing the creed, his voice a rumble of finality. The lieutenant sagged. the eagle on his neck seeming to wilt, a symbol stripped of power. As cruiser lights crested the distant road, Ethan stepped back, the night's chill seeping through his vest, carrying the faint, clean scent of impending rain. The confrontation's embers cooled, leaving space for reflection. The whisper that started it all now a full circle, Caleb's plea answered not in thunder, but in the quiet unraveling of chains. He mounted up as the crew reformed, engines stirring to life in a staggered hum that vibrated through the lot like a sigh of release. Vince was handed off without fanfare, Reyes' team arriving in a swirl of gravel, questions fired in low tones that promised accountability. No blood spilled, just the poetry of justice, loyalty manifesting as an unyielding stand. The ride back to Willow Creek unfolded under a canopy of emerging stars, the road a silver ribbon unspooling toward dawn's first blush. Ethan led at a measured pace, the wind whispering through his hair, easing the knots of tension from his shoulders. Ghosts of old missions rode lighter now, subdued by the redemption woven into this night's work, promises from foxholes evolving into shields for the vulnerable. Marcus pulled alongside briefly, clapping his shoulder in silent salute, while Lena trailed the pack, her watchful eyes ensuring no shadows followed. The garage lights glowed ahead like a hearth, Joseph's silhouette visible in the doorway. Arms open as the convoy rolled in. Caleb and Lily rushed out, the boy waving wildly, the girl's face alight with the unscarred joy of home. Joseph enveloped them again, his thanks a nod to Ethan that carried the weight of newfound alliance. "Road's yours," he said simply, the words sealing a bond forged in crisis. The Vipers lingered only moments, handshakes, quiet words, before dispersing into the night, their thunder fading toward distant horizons, 77 strong but scattering like seeds of vigilance. Ethan lingered last, kneeling to meet Lily's gaze. "Whispers get heard," he told her, ruffling her hair. She hugged him fierce, the embrace a balm for scars unseen. As the first light gilded the garage's roof, Ethan fired his engine one final time, the rumble a farewell laced with purpose. The family stood together, whole against the dawn, a testament to chosen kin and honors kept. Corruption's roots might regrow, but the Viper's light, silent, enduring, would cut them down. Ethan rode into the rising sun, the desert awakening around him, promises alive in the endless road ahead. Thank you for joining this journey of quiet courage and unbreakable bonds. If these tales of redemption touch your soul, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. We'll ride together for more stories that honor the heart's true north.